adding and subtracting radicals. So to begin, to add and subtract radicals, you need to know when you can and when you cannot actually add and subtract them. You can only do this when they have the same index and the same radicand, meaning if I have a cube root of x, the 3 is what is called the index, and the x in this case is called the radicand. Both have to be the same as the other expression. So for example, 5 square root of x minus 3 square root of x, you can add those together, or in this case subtract, because they're both considered square roots and the radicands are the same, which is the x. So since you both have square roots and the radicand is the same, then you can add and subtract. So 5 minus 3 will give you 2 square roots of x. Same thing in the next one. Again, you have square root and a square root. Also, in this case, the index is the same. Also, the radicand, the xy, is the same in the other expression, xy, which means you can add the coefficients in front. 3 plus 5 will give you 8, and then the square root of xy. Where you cannot is, so these are both square roots, obviously, but the radicand, this is a 10, this is 11, they cannot be added. There is nothing more you can do here. Same thing. Yes, the radicands are the same, 6 and 6, but this is a square root and this is a cube root. Since that's a square root and that's a cube root, you cannot add and subtract them. There's nothing more that you can do. So really the only thing you can do is say that this is the most simplified. Same thing here. This is the most simplified. So at first glance, this one on the right looks like that it cannot be added or subtracted. However, the next part of this is you need to make sure that they are completely simplified first. For example, the square root of 18 is not simplified. The square root of 18 is 9 times 2. The square root of 9 is a perfect square. It is a 3. The 2, you cannot take the square root of, and so you leave it as a square root of 2. So you can take the coefficient 5 and now the coefficient 3 to give you 15 square root of 2. In this next case, 32 can also be broken down into 16 times 2. The square root of 16 is 8, and you cannot take the square root of 2. So now I have 15 square root of 2 minus 8 square root of 2. Because the index is the same, they're both square roots, and the radicand is the same, square root of 2 and square root of 2, you can add and subtract these two numbers. You can add and subtract the coefficients. 15 minus 8 will give you 7 square root of 2. In this next one, you would also say at the beginning, doesn't look like you can add or subtract these. However, again, do not forget, you have to simplify first. So in this second one, you can simplify this in 2 ways. The square root of 16 is the number 4, not the square root of 4, please be careful, it's just the number 4. And x squared, you can simplify if you think of the fact this is a square root of 2. 2 goes into 2 exactly 1 time. So now you have a 5x minus a 4x. You now have the same variable, and you can subtract or add the coefficients. So 5x minus 4x will give me 1x, or just x in that case. So let's try another one. At first glance, this looks like this cannot be combined, or at least it looks like the second and third term could be combined. But don't forget, again, always simplify first. You cannot simplify this anymore, so I'm just going to bring it down. Now in this case, this is a square root. Exponents you would divide into. So 2 goes into 3 one time perfectly. So I can now bring one of these x's out perfectly. And then when I do that, one of them will be left inside here because 2 goes into 3 once with 1 left over. And then this y is still stuck because 2 can't go into 1. Now the next one, same thing with the 5. This is a square root. So I'm just going to bring down the 5. Now, again, exponents. 2 goes into 3 one time perfectly. And then 1 is left over. And then obviously the y because 2 can't go into 1 y like this. So again, 2 goes into 3 once with 1 left over. Now if you notice, the indexes are all the same, square root, square root, square root, and the radicands are the same. And now you can look and see your coefficients, 4x in the front, 2x in the front, and a 5x in the front. Since they also have the same variables, you can add, subtract. 4 minus 2 is 2, plus 5 is 7 x's times the square root of x, y. Now, let's say, for example, real quick, that this, let's say that this didn't have an x. Let's say it was 4x xy minus 2x square root of xy plus 5 square root of xy. Now here you gotta be careful. In this case, that means only this term and this term can combine because you have 4 x's and 2 x's. But here, this 5 is a whole number and there's no x with it. So you can only combine these two. And then you just can bring down the 5 square root of xy. The square roots combine, the radicands combine, but here, this is telling you that there is a 2 of these, whereas this 5 does not have an x with it. So you can only combine like terms. So just be really careful to make sure you can only combine terms that are completely alike. So in this case, if you'd like to pause the video, attempt these and then hit resume to see the answer. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to simplify the inside. The square root of 48 is 16 times 3. And then x cubed, since this is a square root, 2 goes into 3. Okay, you can break it up into x squared and 1 if you want to, because 2 plus 1 is 3. And I broke it up. So the square root of 16 is 4. I cannot take the square root of 3. And 2 goes into 2 one time. And then I can see what's left. There's a 3 left. There's an x left. And on the outside, there's a negative x squared left. So this negative x squared times this x is going to give me an x cubed. And then I'm left with a 3x. Same thing here. I have a negative 8x. 12 can be broken into 4 times 3. And then technically what you could say is 2 goes into 5. You could break it into an even number plus 1 because 4 plus 1 is 5. And so now you can simplify. The square root of 4 is 2. Cannot do anything with the 3. X to the 4th becomes x squared. And then you can see what you're left with, a 3 and an x. And then you can bring down the 8x. So 8 times 2 is 16. X times x squared is x cubed. And then you have a 3x. And now you can look and see, okay, square root and 3x, square root and 3x. And then you can also check, this is an x cubed, this is an x cubed, which means you can completely combine them. Negative 4 minus 16 is a negative 20, x cubed, followed by the square root of 3x. Next, 128 can be broken into 64 times 2, and then you have an x to the fourth. So now the square root of 64 is 8, and x to the fourth becomes an x squared, and the only thing I'm left with is a 2. This 8 times 8 I can bring together, multiply, you always multiply, and you get 64, x squared square root of 2. Next, 18. 18 is 9 times 2. The square root of 9 is 3. So now you can multiply those together. 7 times 3 is 21. I have an x squared on the outside, and then a square root of 2 is left. So now check. Square root and radicand are both the same, square root and a 2. Also, the other variable is an x squared. This variable is an x squared, so you can combine the entire thing. 64 and 21 is going to give you 85. Square root of 2. X squared, square root of 2. So to practice again, pause the video, attempt these problems, and then hit play to see the answer. Square root of 45 is 9 times 5. Square root of 9 is 3. Now that you can take the those two whole numbers and multiply, 6 times 3 is 18. 5x is left inside the square root. I cannot simplify this, so I'm just going to bring the entire thing down. And then 20 is 4 times 5. The square root of 4 is 2. And then you can combine those whole numbers and always multiply. And then you're left with a square root of 5x. And again, check. Square root of 5x, square root of 5x, square root of 5x. So now you can combine 18 minus 3 is 15. And then 15 plus 8 is 23. Square root of 5x. Next, the 3 cannot break down, but if you think of this as a square root, you can think that of how many times 2 goes into 5. So it might be easier since you're dividing by 2, you make it an even number plus 1. So obviously it'd be 4 plus 1 because 4 plus 1 is 5. The square root of 3 you cannot break down, but x to the fourth becomes an x squared. And then you're left with a square root of 3 and an x. And then anything on the outside multiplies together. Square root of 27 is 9 times 3. And then again, x cubed becomes x squared times x, because 2 plus 1 is 3. The square root of 9 is 3. X squared also becomes an x. And then I'm left with a 3. I'm left with an x. And you can multiply anything on the outside. X squared times x gives you x cubed and the square root of 3x. So check the square root of the radicand, and then check the next variable. They're both x cubes. So now if you think of this as there's one of these, and then you're subtracting 3 of these. So 1 minus 3 is a negative 2. And that would be your answer. And last, $175 is going to be 25 times 7 and x to the fourth. The square root of 25 is 5. X to the fourth is x squared. And then I'm left with a square root of 7. Any whole numbers in front can multiply. So 3 times 5 will give me 15 x squared and the square root of 7. Next, 175 x squared breaks up into 25 times 7. The square root of 25 is 5. X squared becomes an x because 2 goes into 2 exactly one time. And you're left with the square root of 7. Anything out front can multiply. So 6 times 5 is 30. x times x is x squared, and then the square root of 7. Now, again, look at your radical. They are the same. Now check your other variable, x squared, x squared. So now you can combine 15 minus 30 will give you a negative 15 x squared square root of 7. And last, square root of 28 gives you 7 times 4. The square root of 4 is 2. You cannot take the square root of 7. Multiply any numbers on the outside. So you'll get negative 2x square root of 7. 63 gives you 9 times 7 as well. Sorry, that's a 7. X squared. The square root of 9 is 3. X squared gives you x, and you're left with the square root of 7. Multiply anything on the outside. 10 times 3x is 30x, square root of 7. Now check. Your radical is the exact same. Oh, I forgot the x. I was about to say the variable in front is not, but they should be. And yes, this has an x and this has an x, so you can combine. They have completely like terms. Negative 2 plus 30 is 28x square root of 7.